The summer sun was beating down on the sidewalk that Saturday afternoon when Robert and Linda Chen finished their volunteer shift at the community food bank. They were both tired but in good spirits. Spending their Saturday mornings helping others had become a routine they genuinely loved. Robert wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand, leaving a small smudge of dust from moving boxes all morning. Linda looked at her watch and smiled. "You know what? We have some time before we need to pick up the groceries. Want to finally do it?" She didn't need to explain what she meant. Robert knew exactly what his wife was talking about. Their 30th wedding anniversary was coming up next month, and they'd been talking about getting a special ring to mark the occasion. "Really? Right now?" Robert asked, glancing down at his worn jeans and old sneakers. His flannel shirt had seen better days, with a small tear near the pocket that Linda kept promising to sew up but never got around to. "Why not?" Linda laughed. "We're not getting any younger, and we've been putting this off for weeks. Besides, does it really matter what we're wearing? We're just looking at jewelry, not meeting the president." Robert couldn't argue with that logic. They'd been married for nearly 3 decades, and if there was one thing he'd learned, it was that when Linda made up her mind about something, it was usually the right call. He took her hand, and they started walking toward the main shopping district just a few blocks away from where they'd parked their old but reliable truck. The downtown area was busy with weekend shoppers. Families walked past them carrying shopping bags, couples strolled hand in hand, and street performers played music on the corners. The Chens didn't come to this part of town very often. It was known for its luxury shops and high-end boutiques, the kind of places that seemed designed to make regular folks feel out of place. But Linda had heard from a friend that there was a particular jewelry store here that had beautiful anniversary rings, and she'd been curious ever since. They found the store easily enough. It was called Diamond Gallery, and even from the outside it looked intimidating. The storefront was all glass and polished chrome, with a single stunning necklace displayed in the window like it was a piece of art in a museum. The price tag wasn't visible, but Robert figured that was probably intentional. If you had to ask, you probably couldn't afford it. "This is the place," Linda said, a hint of nervousness creeping into her voice. She suddenly seemed very aware of her comfortable old cardigan and the sneakers that had definitely seen better days. Her canvas tote bag from the food bank still hung over her shoulder, with the charity's logo printed on the side. "Come on," Robert said gently, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "We've got just as much right to be here as anyone else." They pushed through the heavy glass door, and immediately the atmosphere changed. Outside had been warm and casual, full of life and noise. Inside the Diamond Gallery, everything was hushed and cool. The air conditioning was turned up high enough that Linda actually shivered. The floors were made of polished white marble that reflected the light from crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. Everything sparkled. Everything looked expensive. Everything looked untouchable. Soft classical music played from hidden speakers. The walls were lined with glass cases, each one lit from within to make the jewelry inside glow like treasure. Rings sat on white velvet cushions. Necklaces hung from elegant displays. Watches gleamed under the lights. A few other customers browsed quietly, all of them dressed in clothes that probably cost more than the Chens spent on groceries in a month. Robert and Linda stood near the entrance for a moment, taking it all in. They felt the eyes of the staff on them immediately. There were 3 sales associates visible, all wearing expensive-looking suits. 2 of them quickly looked away and busied themselves with other tasks. The third, a young man with perfectly styled hair and a suit that probably cost more than Robert's entire wardrobe, stared at them openly with an expression that was hard to read but didn't feel friendly. "Maybe we should go," Linda whispered, her confidence from earlier evaporating in the cold, pristine atmosphere of the store. "No," Robert said quietly but firmly. "We came here for a reason. Let's at least look around." They moved slowly through the store, careful not to touch anything. Linda's eyes were drawn to a display case near the center of the room. Inside were anniversary rings, each one more beautiful than the last. Some had diamonds arranged in intricate patterns. Others featured colored gemstones. One in particular caught her attention. It was elegant but not too flashy, with a simple band and 3 diamonds set in a row. It reminded her of their 3 children, all grown now with families of their own. "Robert, look at this one," she said softly, pointing through the glass. He moved beside her and looked where she was pointing. It was perfect, classic, timeless, and beautiful. Exactly the kind of thing Linda would love. That's really nice, he agreed. Should we ask to see it? Before Linda could answer, they heard footsteps approaching. The young man they'd noticed earlier was walking toward them with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. His shoes clicked on the marble floor with each step, and Robert noticed they were so shiny he could probably see his reflection in them. "Good afternoon," the man said, his voice smooth but carrying an edge that both Robert and Linda picked up on immediately. His eyes swept over them, taking in every detail of their appearance: the worn clothes, the dusty shoes, the tote bag, the general air of people who'd spent their morning doing manual labor. "Can I help you find something?" There was something about the way he said, "help you find something," that made it clear he didn't actually think they were there to buy anything. It was the tone someone might use when trying to politely suggest that someone had wandered into the wrong place. "Yes, actually," Robert said, keeping his voice friendly. "We're interested in looking at anniversary rings. Our 30th is coming up next month." "30th," the man repeated, his eyebrows rising slightly. "Well, congratulations on that." He glanced at Linda's left hand, where she wore a simple gold band they'd bought 3 decades ago when they had barely enough money to afford it. It had cost them $200 at the time, which felt like a fortune back then. Now it was scratched and worn thin from years of wear, but Linda had never wanted to replace it. Until now, when they wanted to add to it rather than replace it. "We were hoping to see that one," Linda said, pointing to the ring that had caught her eye. "Could we take a closer look?" The sales associate didn't move toward the case. Instead, he clasped his hands in front of him and gave them what was clearly meant to be a professional smile. "Of course, I'd be happy to show you our collection, but I should mention, just so there are no surprises, that the pieces in this particular case start at around $15,000. The one you're looking at is actually $18,500. He said it like he was doing them a favor, like he was saving them from embarrassment. Robert felt his jaw tighten slightly, but he kept his expression neutral. Beside him, Linda's cheeks flushed just a little bit. "That's fine," Robert said calmly. "We'd still like to see it, please." The man's smile faltered for just a second. He clearly hadn't expected that response. He'd expected them to make excuses and leave, or to suddenly remember they had somewhere else to be. People who looked like the Chens weren't supposed to ask to see $18,000 rings. "I see," he said slowly. "Well, before I remove any pieces from the case, it's store policy that I verify customers are serious buyers. We've had issues in the past with people treating the store like a museum, just wanting to look at expensive things with no real intention to purchase. I'm sure you understand. It's about security and insurance." Robert and Linda exchanged a glance. Neither of them had ever heard of such a policy, and something told them it wasn't actually written down anywhere official. It sounded more like something this particular person had just decided on his own. "We're serious," Linda said quietly. "We wouldn't have come in otherwise." The sales associate looked them up and down again, his gaze lingering on Robert's dusty jeans and Linda's worn sneakers. "I'm sure you believe that," he said, his tone now openly patronizing. "But perhaps I could show you some catalogs instead. You could browse at your leisure, get an idea of what you like, and then maybe come back another time when you're more prepared." The message was clear. Come back when you're dressed appropriately. Come back when you look like you belong here. Or better yet, don't come back at all. Go somewhere else. Somewhere more suitable for people like you. Robert felt his wife's hand tense in his. He knew that feeling. It was the same tension she got whenever someone treated her unfairly, whenever someone made assumptions about who she was or what she was capable of. He'd seen it when a restaurant server once tried to seat them near the kitchen, despite the dining room being half empty. He'd seen it when a car dealer had ignored them for 20 minutes while helping other customers who'd arrived after them. He'd seen it too many times over the years, and he was tired of it. "We don't need catalogs," Robert said, his voice still calm but with an unmistakable edge to it now. "We know what we want to see. That ring right there. And we're not asking to take it home with us. We're just asking to look at it properly, like any other customer in this store would be allowed to do." The sales associate's expression hardened. The pretense of politeness was wearing thin. "Sir, I've explained our policy. If you're not willing to work within our guidelines, then perhaps this isn't the right store for you. There's a department store about 3 blocks down that has a jewelry section. You might find their selection more appropriate for your needs." The words hit exactly as they were intended to. More appropriate for your needs. Translation: more appropriate for your budget. More appropriate for people like you. The message couldn't have been clearer if he'd just come out and said it directly. Linda's face had gone from slightly flushed to deeply red. But it wasn't embarrassment anymore. It was anger. Quiet, controlled anger, but anger nonetheless. "Excuse me," she said, her voice tight. "Are you saying we're not welcome here?" "Not at all," the man replied smoothly, though his eyes told a different story. "Everyone is welcome to browse. But as I mentioned, our high-value pieces require certain protocols before they can be handled. It's nothing personal. Just business." "It feels pretty personal," Robert said. He pulled his wallet from his back pocket. It was old leather, worn soft from years of use. The stitching was starting to come loose in one corner. He opened it and pulled out a credit card. "Look, we can pay for what we want to buy. We're not here to waste anyone's time. We're here to make a purchase." The sales associate glanced at the card with barely concealed disdain. It was a regular credit card, nothing fancy. No precious metal finish, no exclusive design. Just a plain card from a standard bank. "I'm sure you have credit available," he said in a tone that suggested he wasn't sure of that at all. "But the piece you're asking about costs nearly $20,000. That's not the kind of purchase most people make on a whim, especially—" He trailed off, but the implication hung in the air between them. "Especially people who look like you do right now. Especially people who show up in work clothes and dirty shoes. Especially people who don't look wealthy." "Especially what?" Linda challenged, finding her voice again. "What exactly are you trying to say?" Before the sales associate could respond, another voice cut in. "Is there a problem here, Trevor?" A woman in her 40s approached, wearing a sharp business suit and an expression of practiced concern. She had the air of someone in charge. Her name tag identified her as the store manager. Trevor, apparently that was his name, turned to her with relief evident on his face. "No problem at all, Ms. Patricia. I was just explaining our viewing policy to these customers." Patricia looked at Robert and Linda with the same assessing gaze Trevor had used. Whatever she saw apparently confirmed something for her, because her expression shifted to match Trevor's barely concealed judgment. "I see," she said slowly. "And are they unable to comply with our policy?" "They seem to be taking issue with it," Trevor explained, somehow managing to make it sound like Robert and Linda were being unreasonable, rather than him being discriminatory. Patricia nodded as if this made perfect sense. She turned to the Chens with a smile that was all professional courtesy and no warmth. "I'm sure Trevor has explained that we have certain protocols for our most valuable pieces. These protocols exist to protect both our inventory and our other customers who are here to make serious purchases. I hope you can understand that." "Other customers who are here to make serious purchases," Robert repeated slowly. "Are you saying we're not serious customers?" "I'm saying," Patricia replied carefully, "that we cater to a particular clientele. Our pieces represent significant investments, and we need to ensure that everyone who handles them is genuinely in a position to make those investments. It's not personal. It's simply good business practice." Around them, other customers had started to notice the conversation. A well-dressed couple near the watch display had stopped their browsing to listen. An older woman trying on bracelets was glancing over with interest. A man in an expensive suit was watching with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Linda felt the weight of all those eyes on her. She looked down at her old sneakers, at her comfortable cardigan that had a small pull in the fabric near the hem. She suddenly felt very small and very out of place. This had been a mistake. They shouldn't have come here. They should have known better than to walk into a store like this looking the way they did. But then she felt Robert's hand squeeze hers, and she remembered something important. They had every right to be here. They had money. They could afford anything in this store. The only reason they were being treated this way was because of how they looked, and that wasn't right. That wasn't fair. And it definitely wasn't legal. "This is discrimination," Robert said quietly but clearly. "You're refusing to serve us because of how we're dressed, because we don't look like your usual customers." "That's absolutely not what's happening here," Patricia said quickly, her professional mask slipping just slightly. "We serve all customers equally. We simply have policies in place that everyone must follow." "Funny how you didn't mention these policies to them," Linda said, nodding toward the well-dressed couple who'd been watching. "Did you ask them to prove they were serious buyers before you showed them anything? Did you suggest they go to a department store instead?" Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line. "Every situation is different. We assess each customer's needs individually. Right, Robert said bitterly. And you assessed our needs based on our clothes. Based on practical considerations, Patricia corrected. Look, I'm going to be frank with you. Yes, we notice when customers come in dressed casually. We notice when people seem to be browsing rather than shopping. We notice when someone walks in off the street looking like they just came from doing yard work. This is a luxury establishment. We maintain certain standards. Our regular customers expect a certain atmosphere when they shop here. An atmosphere without people like us in it, Linda said. It wasn't a question. An atmosphere of exclusivity and refinement, Patricia countered. Now, I've been patient and I've explained our position. If you'd like to make an appointment to return at another time, perhaps when you're more appropriately dressed and prepared to make a purchase, we'd be happy to assist you then. But right now, I have other customers who need attention, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to either browse quietly without requiring staff assistance or to leave the store. Trevor stood beside his manager with his arms crossed, looking vindicated. He'd clearly been waiting for backup, and now that he had it, he felt emboldened. We're just trying to maintain the integrity of the shopping experience, he added, as if that explained everything. Robert felt anger rising in his chest, hot and sharp. He'd dealt with this kind of treatment before in his life, but it never got easier. If anything, it got harder. Because every time it happened, it was a reminder that no matter what you achieved or how hard you worked, some people would always judge you by superficial things. And right now, standing in this pristine store with his wife being humiliated beside him, he wanted nothing more than to tell these people exactly what he thought of them and their policies and their precious atmosphere. But he also knew that losing his temper wouldn't help. It would only confirm whatever prejudices they already had. It would give them an excuse to call security and have them physically removed. It would turn them into the villains of the story instead of the victims. So instead, he took a deep breath and looked Patricia directly in the eye. Just so I'm clear, he said slowly, you're asking us to leave because we don't look wealthy enough for your store. Is that correct? I'm asking you to either comply with our policies or to leave, yes, Patricia said stiffly. And if we refuse to leave? Patricia's expression went cold. Then I'll have to call security, and I really don't think you want that kind of scene. It would be embarrassing for everyone involved. There it was, the threat. Thinly veiled but unmistakable. Leave quietly or be forced to leave. Don't make trouble. Don't cause a scene. Know your place and go away. Robert looked at Linda. Her eyes were shining with unshed tears, but her jaw was set with determination. She gave him a tiny nod. They both knew what this was. They both knew it was wrong. And they both knew that fighting it here and now wouldn't change anything except to make them look like troublemakers. Fine, Robert said quietly. We'll leave. But I want you to know that this is wrong. What you're doing here is wrong. You're judging people based on appearances. You're making assumptions about what they can or can't afford. And you're treating decent people like they're not good enough to breathe the same air as your other customers. Your opinion has been noted, Patricia said coolly. Trevor, please see them out. That won't be necessary, Linda said quickly. We can find the door ourselves. As they turned to leave, Robert caught the eye of the well-dressed couple who'd been watching. The woman looked uncomfortable, like she knew she was witnessing something unjust but didn't know what to do about it. The man just looked away. They walked toward the door in silence, their footsteps echoing on the marble floor. Every eye in the store was on them now. The other customers, the sales associates, everyone was watching them leave. Linda felt the weight of their stares like physical pressure on her back. She wanted to run, to get out of there as fast as possible. But she forced herself to walk slowly and steadily. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her flee. Robert's hand was still holding hers, and she could feel the tension in his grip. He was angry, really angry. In 30 years of marriage, she'd seen him angry plenty of times, but this was different. This was the kind of anger that came from being treated as less than human, from being dismissed and degraded for no reason other than not fitting someone's narrow idea of what a valuable customer should look like. They were almost to the door when Trevor called out behind them. And perhaps next time, consider the dress code before entering an establishment like this. It saves everyone a lot of trouble. Robert stopped walking. Linda felt him freeze beside her, his entire body going rigid. For a moment she thought he might turn around and say something, do something. But then his shoulders sagged slightly and he let out a long breath. Come on, he said quietly to Linda. Let's just go. But Linda had reached her limit. She turned back to face Trevor and Patricia, both of whom stood near the center of the store looking like they'd just accomplished something worthy of pride. "You know what's really sad?" she said, her voice shaking slightly but strong. "We came in here ready to spend money. Real money. We came in here excited and happy, wanting to celebrate 3 decades of marriage with something special. And instead of helping us, instead of treating us like human beings, you decided we weren't worth your time because of what we're wearing." "Ma'am," Patricia began. But Linda cut her off. "I'm not finished. You talk about maintaining standards and creating an atmosphere and serving your clientele. But what you're really doing is judging people. You're deciding who deserves your attention and who doesn't, based on nothing but appearances. And maybe that works for you most of the time. Maybe most of the people you judge correctly decide they can't afford your products and they leave quietly. But someday you're going to do this to the wrong person. Someday you're going to treat someone badly who actually has more money than all your other customers combined, and you're going to regret it." "Is that supposed to be a threat?" Trevor asked with a smirk. "Are you trying to tell us you're secretly rich?" "Because forgive me for being skeptical, but it's not a threat," Robert interrupted, his voice cutting through Trevor's mockery. "It's just a statement of fact. You judge books by their covers, and eventually that's going to cost you. Maybe today, maybe some other day, but it will happen." He turned back toward the door, ready to leave once and for all, when a voice spoke up from across the store. "They're right, you know." It was the older woman who'd been looking at bracelets. She was probably in her 70s, elegantly dressed in clothes that probably cost more than the Chen's monthly mortgage payment. She walked toward them slowly, her heels clicking on the marble floor. "I've been shopping here for 15 years, and I've watched this happen more times than I can count. You people size up every customer who walks through that door, and you treat them according to whatever judgment you've made about their bank account." Patricia's expression shifted to alarm. This was clearly a valued customer, someone whose opinion actually mattered to her. "Mrs. Reynolds, I assure you—" "Don't bother," Mrs. Reynolds said curtly. "I've seen it happen. I've pretended not to notice because it wasn't my business and I was getting good service, so why rock the boat? But watching you treat this couple like they're criminals for having the audacity to walk into your store while dressed casually, it's disgusting. It really is. We simply have policies." Patricia started again, but her voice had lost its certainty. "Policies that you apply selectively based on prejudice," Mrs. Reynolds said. "Don't insult my intelligence by pretending otherwise. These people asked to see a ring. A simple request. The same request I made 10 minutes ago when I asked to see a bracelet, and you fell all over yourself to help me. The only difference between us is that I'm wearing expensive clothes and they're not." Trevor looked like he wanted to argue, but didn't dare contradict a customer like Mrs. Reynolds. Patricia was clearly doing mental calculations, trying to figure out how to salvage the situation without admitting fault. The other customers in the store were watching with rapt attention now. What had started as a quiet dismissal had turned into a full-blown confrontation. "I appreciate your concern, Mrs. Reynolds," Patricia finally said, her voice strained. "But I'm confident that we've handled this situation appropriately. We have the right to enforce our policies as we see fit." "Then you've lost my business," Mrs. Reynolds said simply. She removed the bracelet she'd been trying on and placed it on the counter. "I was about to purchase this and 2 other pieces for my granddaughters. That's roughly $30,000 you just lost because you couldn't be bothered to treat everyone with basic respect. I wonder how your owner will feel about that when they hear why one of their best customers is taking her business elsewhere." Patricia went pale. "Mrs. Reynolds, please let's not be hasty. If there's been a misunderstanding—" "There's been no misunderstanding," Mrs. Reynolds said firmly. "I understand perfectly. You run a store that judges people by their appearance and treats them accordingly. That's your choice, and it's my choice to spend my money somewhere else." She turned to Robert and Linda. "I'm sorry you had to experience this. You deserve better." "Thank you," Linda said quietly, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks despite her efforts to hold them back. Mrs. Reynolds nodded and walked out of the store with her head high. The moment the door closed behind her, the atmosphere in the store shifted. The remaining customers were whispering to each other. One couple was already heading for the exit. Patricia looked like she'd just been slapped. "This is ridiculous," Trevor muttered, though he no longer sounded confident. "One disgruntled customer doesn't mean—" "One of our top customers," Patricia hissed at him under her breath, though not quietly enough that Robert and Linda couldn't hear. Do you have any idea how much money she spends here annually? Robert felt a grim satisfaction at seeing them squirm, but it was hollow. The damage was already done. They'd still been humiliated. They'd still been judged and found wanting by people who didn't know the first thing about them. Mrs. Reynolds standing up for them was meaningful, but it didn't erase the hurt. "We're leaving," he said to Linda, guiding her gently toward the door. "Wait," Patricia called out, her professional mask cracking. "Perhaps we were too hasty. If you'd still like to see that ring—" "No," Robert said flatly, not even turning around. "We wouldn't, not anymore, not here. Not from you, sir, please, let's start over. I'm sure we can—" "You can't start over," Linda said, turning to face Patricia one last time. "You can't unsay what you said or undo what you did. You showed us exactly who you are and what you think of people like us. Why would we give you our money now? Why would we want a ring from your store when every time we looked at it, we'd remember how you made us feel today?" Patricia had no answer for that. She stood there, mouth slightly open, clearly trying to think of some way to salvage the situation, but coming up empty. Robert put his arm around Linda's shoulders and guided her toward the door. This time they made it all the way there. The door was heavy, and he had to push hard to open it. The moment they stepped outside, the warm afternoon air hit them like a wave. It felt like stepping out of a freezer into the real world again. They stood on the sidewalk for a moment, neither of them quite sure what to do next. Linda was crying openly now, not bothering to hide it. Robert felt his own eyes burning, but refused to let the tears fall. Not here. Not where anyone from the store might see. "I'm sorry," Linda said through her tears. "I'm sorry for crying. I know it's stupid to let them get to me like this." "It's not stupid," Robert said gently, pulling her into a hug right there on the busy sidewalk. "It's not stupid at all. They were cruel. What they did was wrong, and you have every right to be upset." "I just wanted to look at a ring," she said, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "That's all. I just wanted to look at a stupid ring for our anniversary." "I know," Robert said, his voice tight with emotion. "I know you did." They stood there for a long moment, holding each other while people walked past them on the sidewalk. Some people glanced at them curiously. Others politely looked away. Nobody stopped to ask if they were okay. Finally, Linda pulled back and wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Can we just go home, please? I don't want to be here anymore." Robert was about to agree when something caught his eye. Across the street and down about half a block, there was another jewelry store. It was smaller than the Diamond Gallery, less showy, with a simple sign that read, "Heritage Jewelers." The window display was elegant but understated, featuring just a few carefully chosen pieces rather than an overwhelming array of glittering items. Robert looked at that store for a long moment, then looked at his wife. Linda's eyes were red from crying and her face was still flushed. She looked defeated. She looked like she just wanted to go home and forget this whole awful afternoon had ever happened. And he understood that feeling. Part of him wanted the same thing. But another part of him, a stubborn part that refused to let people like Trevor and Patricia win, had a different idea. "Linda," he said carefully, "what if we tried one more place?" She looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "Robert, no. I can't do that again. I can't walk into another store and have them look at us like we're beggars. I just can't. Look at that place," he said, pointing to Heritage Jewelers. "It's different, smaller, less pretentious. And even if they do judge us the same way, at least we'll know we didn't let those people chase us away completely. We came here to look at rings for our anniversary, and that's what we're going to do." Linda followed his gaze to the other store. She wanted to say no. She wanted to tell him she was done for the day, that her heart couldn't take another rejection, but she also knew that look in her husband's eyes. It was the same determination she'd seen when he'd started his business 30 years ago, with nothing but an idea and borrowed money. The same determination that had helped them raise 3 kids on a tight budget. The same determination that had gotten them through every challenge they'd faced as a couple. "Okay," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "One more try. But if they treat us the same way, then we leave," Robert promised. "No argument. We go straight home and I'll order you a ring online from the comfort of our living room. Deal?" "Deal," Linda agreed, managing a weak smile. They crossed the street carefully, waiting for the light and then walking hand in hand toward Heritage Jewelers. With each step, Linda felt her anxiety growing. She kept thinking about Trevor's condescending smile, Patricia's cold dismissal, the way everyone in the diamond gallery had stared at them. What if this was the same? What if all fancy jewelry stores were like that? But they'd come this far. She wouldn't back out now. The door to Heritage Jewelers was wood and glass, far less imposing than the diamond gallery's chrome and crystal entrance. When Robert pulled it open, a small bell chimed above them, announcing their arrival in a friendly, old-fashioned way. The store was smaller, more intimate. The lighting was warm rather than harsh. The floors were hardwood instead of marble, and there was music playing, but it wasn't classical. It was soft jazz, the kind of music that made you want to relax rather than worry about touching something expensive. There were a few display cases scattered throughout the space, each one showcasing jewelry that looked beautiful but not ostentatious. No massive chandeliers, no pretentious atmosphere, just a nice store with nice things. A woman appeared from the back room, alerted by the bell. She was probably in her 50s with kind eyes and a warm smile. She wore a simple dress and comfortable shoes, the kind of outfit that suggested she cared more about being practical than impressively stylish. "Good afternoon," she said brightly. "Welcome to Heritage Jewelers. I'm Catherine. Feel free to look around and let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything specific I can help you find." That was it. No sizing them up. No judgmental once-over. No thinly veiled suggestions that they didn't belong. Just a genuine welcome and an offer to help. Robert and Linda exchanged a glance, both of them cautiously optimistic. Maybe this would be different after all. "Thank you," Linda said, her voice still shaky from the earlier ordeal. "We're looking for an anniversary ring. Our 30th is coming up next month. 30 years. Catherine's face lit up with genuine joy. "That's wonderful. Congratulations to you both. That's quite an achievement these days." She moved toward one of the display cases. "We have a lovely selection of anniversary rings. Did you have a particular style in mind?" Linda found herself relaxing slightly. Catherine's warmth was so different from the cold professionalism of the diamond gallery that it felt almost surreal. "Something classic," she said. "Not too flashy. Maybe with 3 stones? We have 3 children, and I thought it would be nice to represent them." "Oh, that's such a sweet idea," Catherine said, and she sounded like she genuinely meant it. "I have just the thing. Let me show you a few options." She unlocked the display case without hesitation, without asking for proof of anything, without making them jump through hoops. She simply pulled out 3 different rings and laid them on a velvet tray for Linda to examine. "These are all from our anniversary collection. They're made with excellent quality diamonds and craftsmanship. This one here," she pointed to a ring very similar to the one Linda had wanted to see at the diamond gallery, "is particularly popular. The 3 stones represent past, present, and future, though I love your interpretation of representing your children." Linda reached out and gently touched the ring. It was beautiful. The diamonds caught the light and sparkled softly. The band was platinum, simple and elegant. It was perfect. "Would you like to try it on?" Catherine asked. Linda looked at her in surprise. "I can?" "Of course." Catherine laughed. "How else will you know if you like it?" "Here, let me help you." She carefully took the ring and held it out for Linda, who extended her hand with fingers that trembled slightly. Catherine slipped the ring onto her finger, right next to her worn wedding band. The contrast was striking. The old ring so thin and scratched, the new one so bright and perfect. But somehow they looked right together. "It's beautiful," Linda breathed, her eyes filling with tears again. But these were different tears. Not tears of humiliation, but tears of joy and relief and gratitude for being treated like a person instead of a problem. Robert leaned in to look. "It really is. How do you feel about it?" "I love it," Linda said honestly. "I absolutely love it," Catherine smiled. "It looks beautiful on you. And if I may say so, it pairs wonderfully with your wedding band. There's something really special about seeing both rings together like that. The old and the new. 30 years of love." They spent the next 20 minutes talking with Catherine about the ring. She explained the quality of the diamonds, the craftsmanship of the setting, the warranty and care instructions. She answered every question patiently and thoroughly. She treated them with the same respect and attention she would presumably give to anyone, regardless of how they were dressed. "Now," Catherine said eventually, "I should mention the price. This particular ring is $16,500. We do offer financing options if that would be helpful. Or, of course, you're welcome to pay in full. We accept all major credit cards, checks, or bank transfers. She said it matter-of-factly, with no judgment, no testing to see if they'd flinch at the number. Just straightforward information. Robert reached into his pocket, not for his worn wallet this time, but for a different wallet he kept in his inside jacket pocket. It was newer, less worn, and when he opened it, Linda caught a glimpse of several cards inside that they rarely used. Cards that most people had never seen. Cards that weren't offered to just anyone. He pulled out a black credit card and handed it to Catherine. "We'll take it. And actually, while we're here, could we look at a few other pieces? My wife mentioned you have 3 children and their birthdays are coming up. We'd like to get them something special too." Catherine's eyes widened slightly when she saw the card, but to her credit, her expression didn't change beyond that momentary surprise. "Of course," she said warmly. "I'd be delighted to show you more. What kind of pieces did you have in mind?" For the next hour, Robert and Linda browsed through Catherine's store with the kind of attention and respect they'd deserved at the Diamond Gallery, but had been denied. Catherine showed them necklaces for their daughters, elegant watches for their sons-in-law, even cufflinks for their teenage grandson who was going to his first formal dance. As they looked at each piece, Robert found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't expected. The tension from the earlier confrontation was slowly draining away, replaced by the simple pleasure of shopping for gifts for people he loved with someone who treated him with dignity. "You know," Catherine said at one point while wrapping up one of their purchases, "I have to tell you something. I've been doing this for 23 years and I learned early on that you can never judge a person's worth by their appearance. Some of my best customers over the years have been people who came in wearing work clothes or casual outfits, and some of the people who looked the wealthiest walked out without buying anything at all. It's taught me to treat everyone the same with respect and kindness, because you never really know someone's story just by looking at them." Linda felt a lump forming in her throat. "That's a good philosophy," she said quietly. "We just came from another store down the street. They didn't share your view." Catherine paused in her wrapping and looked up with concern. "The Diamond Gallery?" When they nodded, she sighed. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't speak ill of competitors, but I've heard stories. They have a reputation for being selective about who they help. It's their loss, honestly, and clearly their judgment wasn't very good, considering you're here now making substantial purchases with me instead of them." "Substantial is right," Robert said with a slight smile. He'd been keeping a mental tally. Between the anniversary ring, 3 necklaces for their daughters, 2 watches, the cufflinks, and a few other pieces they'd fallen in love with. They were approaching a total that would have made Trevor and Patricia sick if they'd known. "Can you tell me the total so far?" Catherine consulted her notes. "With everything you've selected, we're at $247,000. That includes the anniversary ring, the 3 diamond necklaces, the 2 watches, the cufflinks, the bracelet set, the earrings for your youngest daughter, and the pendant you chose for your mother-in-law." Robert nodded. It was a significant amount of money, more than they'd originally planned to spend. But looking at everything laid out before them, thinking about the joy these gifts would bring to their family, it felt right. "We'll take it all," he said. "Can you arrange for the pieces that need sizing to be adjusted and delivered to our home?" "Absolutely," Catherine said. "I'll need to take some measurements and get your address. The work should take about 2 weeks and we'll deliver everything personally at no additional charge." She hesitated, then added, "If you don't mind me asking, may I know what you do? I'm always curious about the stories behind my customers." Linda and Robert exchanged a glance. This was the moment where they could reveal what Trevor and Patricia had been too prejudiced to discover. But looking at Catherine's kind face, Robert realized he didn't need to make it about proving anything. This wasn't about revenge or showing off. This was just a woman who'd treated them with kindness, and she deserved honesty in return. "I recently retired," Robert said. "I spent the last 30 years building a software company. We developed security systems for businesses and hospitals. Started in our garage with nothing but an idea and borrowed money. Last year we finally sold it to a larger tech company. Did pretty well for ourselves." Catherine's eyebrows rose. "That's incredible. You must be very proud of what you built." "We are," Linda said. "But we've always tried to stay grounded. We still volunteer at the food bank every Saturday morning. We still drive our old truck. We still live in the same house we bought 25 years ago. Money changes some things, but we've tried not to let it change who we are as people." "That's admirable," Catherine said sincerely. And it explains why you came in dressed the way you are. You'd been volunteering? We had, Robert confirmed, and we didn't think it would matter. We thought we could walk into a jewelry store and be treated like anyone else. We were wrong, at least at the first place we tried. Catherine shook her head. Their loss is definitely my gain. This is one of the largest single sales I've had in years, and beyond that, you two are lovely people. It's been a genuine pleasure helping you today. As Catherine processed their payment and made arrangements for the delivery of their purchases, Robert found himself thinking about the contrast between the two stores. The Diamond Gallery with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers and cold judgmental staff. Heritage Jewelers with its warm lighting and kind owner who saw people instead of outfits. There was a lesson in there somewhere about what really mattered in business and in life. When everything was finalized, Catherine handed them a beautiful bag containing the items that didn't need adjustment, including Linda's anniversary ring in a velvet box. Thank you so much for your business, she said warmly, and congratulations again on 30 years together. That's a beautiful thing. Thank you, Linda said, for everything. You've made this experience so much better than we expected. As they left Heritage Jewelers, the late afternoon sun was casting long shadows on the sidewalk. They'd spent far longer than planned, but neither of them regretted it. Robert carried the bag carefully while Linda walked beside him, still touching the ring box in her pocket every few minutes, as if to make sure it was real. You know what we should do? Robert said as they approached their truck. What's that? We should tell people about this. About what happened today. Both the bad and the good. Linda looked at him questioningly. What do you mean? I mean, we should leave reviews. An honest review about our experience at the Diamond Gallery, warning others about how they treat customers, and a glowing review for Heritage Jewelers, letting people know about Catherine and how wonderful she was. People should know about both. Linda nodded slowly. You're right, we should, though I have a feeling the Diamond Gallery is going to hear about us in other ways too. Mrs. Reynolds seemed pretty serious about taking her business elsewhere. She did, Robert agreed. And I wouldn't be surprised if she tells other people about what she witnessed. That kind of word of mouth can kill a business, especially a luxury retailer that depends on reputation. They reached their truck and climbed in. As Robert started the engine, Linda pulled out the ring box and opened it one more time just to look at the ring sparkling in the late afternoon light. I still can't believe how differently we were treated in those two stores, she said. Same couple, same request, same day, but completely different experiences. It shows you what really matters, Robert said as he pulled out into traffic. Trevor and Patricia judged us based on surfaces. They saw old clothes and made assumptions. Catherine saw people and treated us accordingly. That's the difference between a business that deserves to succeed and one that deserves to fail. They drove in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Linda spoke again. Do you think Trevor and Patricia will ever realize what they lost today? Robert considered this. Maybe, probably not right away. People like that usually need multiple wake-up calls before they change their behavior, if they change at all. But between Mrs. Reynolds taking her business elsewhere and the reviews we're going to leave, they'll at least have some consequences for their actions. Good, Linda said firmly. They deserve consequences. What they did was wrong. It was discriminatory and hurtful and just plain mean. It was, Robert agreed. But you know what? In a weird way, I'm almost glad it happened. Linda looked at him in surprise. Glad? How can you be glad about that? Because it led us to Catherine and Heritage Jewelers. If we'd been treated well at the Diamond Gallery, we probably would have bought your ring there and left. We never would have discovered Catherine's store or gotten to know her. We never would have found someone who truly appreciated our business and treated us with genuine respect. Sometimes bad experiences lead us to better places. Linda thought about this and found herself agreeing. You're right, and the ring I got is perfect. More perfect than that first one I wanted to see. Catherine really took the time to understand what I wanted and help me find it. Plus, we ended up spending a lot more money than we planned, Robert added with a chuckle. Which I'm sure our accountant will have thoughts about. But seeing how happy you are right now, and thinking about how happy our daughters and their families will be when they receive their gifts, it's worth it. When they got home, Linda immediately called their oldest daughter to tell her about the day's events. As she recounted the story, Robert could hear the emotions in her voice changing from hurt when describing the Diamond Gallery to joy when talking about Heritage Jewelers and Catherine's kindness. Over the next few days, Robert followed through on his plan to leave reviews. His review of the Diamond Gallery was honest and detailed, describing exactly what had happened without exaggeration or embellishment. He didn't need to inflate the story or make it worse than it was. The truth was damning enough. His review of Heritage Jewelers was equally detailed but filled with praise for Catherine's professionalism and kindness. He specifically mentioned how she'd treated them with respect regardless of their appearance, and how that had earned her a significant sale and loyal customers for life. The reviews got attention quickly. Other people added their own stories about negative experiences at the Diamond Gallery, creating a pattern that was hard to ignore. Meanwhile, Heritage Jewelers saw an influx of new customers who'd read about Catherine's approach and wanted to support her business. About 2 weeks later, when Catherine delivered their adjusted jewelry pieces personally as promised, she brought interesting news. "You probably don't know this," she said as she carefully laid out the completed items on their dining room table, "but the Diamond Gallery has been having some trouble lately. Several of their longtime customers have stopped shopping there, and apparently their owner launched an investigation into what happened. I heard through the grapevine that both the manager and that sales associate who treated you poorly are no longer with the company." Linda's eyes widened. "Really?